I've got to say, I would have loved to be the fly on the wall listening to this game pitch. A horror-themed pinball game, complete with several of the most prominent cult classic pulp horror franchises jumping on board. I've always had a bit of a fondness for pinball since I was a kid. I'm old enough to remember when arcade machines were still kind of a thing. I started playing those when they were on their way out, so going to the arcade was something I hold very dearly as a memory, from my childhood. I also remember that old Space Cadet virtual pinball game I'd play on my parents' ancient Windows 95 desktop. But it's been years, probably at least a decade or more, since I've actually gotten hands-on with pinball, in either physical or virtual form. So yeah, pinball is cool, but I'm definitely way out of practice by easily over a decade, and this game does not make it easy for me to re-familiarize myself with the basics. That's probably my biggest nitpick right off the bat. The controls here are not great. You control the flippers on either side using the corresponding shift keys on the left and right side of your keyboard. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the fact that sometimes you'll need to shake the machine itself to the left or right, which you can only do by tapping the Alt key on the left or right side. Maybe playing this game on a controller might be more convenient, I wouldn't know. For me, I religiously adhere to the principle that if a game releases on PC, it should go without saying that the lowest minimum requirement would be that it fully supports keyboard and mouse and has a basic control scheme that doesn't make me want to hurl myself out of a third floor window. Luckily, key rebinding is a supported option here, so I'd absolutely recommend familiarizing yourself with that menu before jumping in game and experiencing the same awkwardness I had to go through. Moving on, I'm going to assume you know the basic rules of pinball. It's pretty much one of the easiest games to learn. Keep the ball from falling below your flippers and earn as many points as you can before succumbing to that fatal eventuality. Here in Pinball M though, while you can play classic mode and play that traditional way, there's also a campaign mode which presents you with differing modifiers that slightly tweak the way you play to make things more interesting. Like for example, you have the Shiver Challenge modifier, where the background lighting is reduced significantly, making it far more difficult to aim and keep the ball going. It's a simple little tweak, but often those kinds of simple debuffs are the most interesting to play with. There's also your typical time challenge, where you have to earn as many points as possible within a very limited amount of time, 2 minutes I believe. My favorite of the game modes personally is the Dread Challenge mode, where it's basically a spin-off of the standard time challenge, in that you still have to focus on racking up as many points as possible, but here you have to meet ever-increasing minimum point totals every minute or so, and the requirements grow larger and more difficult over time. The good news is that the faster you fulfill these requirements, whatever time was left you will be added towards your next countdown, so if you had 12 seconds left, your next arbitrary deadline will be 72 seconds from now instead of 60. I didn't think there were that many ways you could have varied up pinball and made it interesting, so I'll give credit where credit's due. Zen Studios has done a pretty decent job here adding their own distinctive spin on a fundamentally straightforward vanilla game.
I would love to publish these findings. Now, you understand what they are. What is that?
The hunger that knows no bounds! You could live forever.
The structure causes pain. Hurry, examine it from every side. I will try to hold them off. They underestimated us.
However, of course, these minor gameplay deviations aren't why people are playing and buying the DLC, so let's talk about that. Pinball M is free-to-play, but as is the case whenever anyone hears the term free-to-play, there's always the obvious follow-up question of, well, what's the catch? And to be fair to the developers, they're at least upfront about what it'll cost you and what you get. Zen Studios makes its money by getting you in the door, offering you one admittedly pretty awesome pinball level, in this case a Call of Cthulhu themed level, and charging you a flat rate of $5.49 for each additional pinball machine if you choose to buy them. For the purposes of this review, I bought 2 of the DLC packs, of the 4 currently available. I bought the Dead by Daylight DLC and the Chucky DLC. To be totally upfront about it, the Dead by Daylight DLC was pretty much the sole reason this game even got my attention to begin with. I do have a slight fondness for Behavior as a developer, despite their bizarre and sometimes inexplicable game balancing decisions. I've got to say, I hadn't planned on starting my day talking about, hey, you know what Dead by Daylight needs most? A pinball game. But then again, Dead by Daylight is now on mobile and is currently pivoting to single-player spin-offs and a feature film adaptation, so I guess a pinball game was inevitable at some point. As far as the level itself, I don't know what I was expecting, but Zen Studios definitely delivered. The sound effects and the music are imported directly from D&D. The layout of the board includes plenty of references to in-game objects, and you even get to choose whether to play as a survivor or a killer, with unique passive perks either way to shake things up just a bit more. I don't know nearly as much about Chucky. I know the basic premise, but I haven't seen any of the films or the new TV show, so a bunch of the more specific references went right over my head. That said, I did enjoy how much of an asshole Chucky himself was. They actually had the doll himself personified in the level. You can annoy him and he'll start throwing knives at you. I can't say I've ever had a cursed doll throw knives at me while I'm bouncing a pinball around a machine, but there's a first time for everything, I suppose. I didn't quite like the layout for this machine nearly as much as the other two. It was a bit stodgy in terms of things you could hit in order to earn points, but the things that were there generally offered higher payouts. It's definitely a different playstyle. I'm not saying it's bad necessarily, but it's not one I enjoyed at all personally. Pinball M's biggest problem from where I'm standing is easily its lack of free and paid replayable content. There's only a meager handful of virtual pinball machines right now. While I'm 100% confident they'll absolutely add more over the coming months, they should have had far more right out of the gate. What's currently here is little more than a glorified free demo with 4 additional small DLC packs. I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation that you offer free-to-play players more than one single level to enjoy, even if your business strategy depends entirely around selling DLC. My preference would have been for every paid level, there should have been at least one free level as well. But who knows, maybe they'll begin offering limited time access to individual DLCs on a rotational basis or something. That wouldn't exactly be the ideal solution, but it'd be something. Now there are 1 or 2 nitpicks I do want to make about the game's performance. For one, there seems to be a weird resolution glitch where upon loading up for the first time, the game does not accurately set the in-game resolution to match your monitor's resolution. The gameplay you're looking at was recorded primarily on my NVIDIA 3070 RTX laptop, although I did play on my NVIDIA 2070 GTX desktop as well. In both cases, the game kept trying to pick some random 1100 by 1500 something resolution standard, as opposed to my laptop's 1440p default screen size or my desktop's 1080p monitor. I have no clue what's causing this, but the game does appear to occasionally try to autocorrect to this random default even if you deliberately pick a different resolution and confirm your choice. Maybe the developers will fix this by the time this review goes out, but as of recording they have not yet done anything to stop this from happening. The customization here is quite extensive, although it doesn't always work in an ideal way. You can earn points by playing and replaying levels and by leveling up your player account. You can then spend these points on cosmetic stuff like specific pinball skins for each map, unique profile pics, and banner backgrounds, etc. However, there always seems to be an arbitrary set of limits enforcing where and how you're allowed to use said items. For instance, while the Call of Cthulhu pinball skin might look cool, you can't use it on the pinball in the Chucky level, or any other level. Okay, whatever. Maybe the developers have to tread carefully here because of some trademark or IP legal issues. It's dumb, but plausible at least. What I don't understand is that when it comes to the profile customization, you can't take a Call of Cthulhu profile pic and combine it with one of the default game backgrounds, even though the latter isn't from a third-party source. It's just a generic background. But God forbid players be allowed to mix and match what cosmetics they actually like best and play Pinball M the way they want, even in the most trivial of ways. Also, it's worth noting that the customization menu is not just one single menu, but a menu containing like half a dozen sub-menus, each with their own corresponding pages. It is incredibly poorly organized. It's like tapping into my Windows OS folder and looking at the multitude of subfolders that await me. It's unnecessarily complicated. I'm not normally someone who's in favor of minimalistic menu UI design, but that doesn't mean I prefer sloppy overcomplication either. Overall, Pinball M does what it sets out to do, which is to provide a decent but not necessarily revolutionary pinball game experience with a distinctly mature, horror-driven edge. It's not exactly going to be a game I'm likely to circle back to anytime soon, mostly because of the lack of content, but if that gets addressed over time, it might be worth taking another look. But yeah, that's it. If you enjoyed this review and want to see more, be sure to leave a comment and let me know. You know the deal, liking the video and subscribing if you want to see more. It all helps. This is Warrior Dan signing out. Stay awesome and peace out.
Expand your lair. Indulge your twisted desires.